Okay, so now we saw this synchronous way of communication for making our dashboard to refresh every specific interval, right? So 5 seconds, every 5 seconds, we are refreshing our dashboard. But for that, we don't want to use the synchronous connection. We want to use the asynchronous connection. Okay. So first we will understand how this HTTP communication happens, HTTP request and response happens, and how the client and servers interacts with respect to HTTP portal and with respect to WebSocket. Okay, sorry, HTTP protocol and WebSocket protocol. So these are two different protocols. Okay, so in WebSocket, in the HTTP, you make a request and the server will give the response. So that's how it makes. So whenever you request a HTTP request, then a connection will get established, and once the server responds back, the connection will get closed. So every HTTP request and response, okay, in this architecture, the connection is established and serves that particular request, and the connection will be closed. So you see this connection will be allowed only for existing response. And again, new connection comes here. Okay, in terms of in the case of WebSocket, when the clients send the request, okay, so then it establishes the connection. Sorry, just hold on for a minute. I'll just save this recordings. Trainings. Okay, what's this? All right. Okay, in case of a WebSocket protocol, what happens is when the client sends the request, the connection is established, and the connection is kept. Okay, so they kept for a longer time. So basically, we have to actually close this connection. Okay, and then there is a communication between both the bidirectional. Sorry. So bidirectional messages possibly means client can send the request to the server. The server with the response with the data or messages. And similar fashion, even server also can send the data. Request the data from client, and client will send. So this is nothing but bidirectional communication between client and server using WebSocket. In case of HTTP, it's only the client request and the server sends. Okay, this is the basic the protocol differences. Now we'll come back to how our dashboard is implemented. So for that, I just have to just bear with me one more explanation of Django channels. Okay, so I told you right in the Django architecture. So we go into this flow where we use the HTTP routers and get the data from views and render it to the browser. So this whatever there in this green. Okay, that's what this flow is. Little different from means it's almost similar but different representation. But this is the flow which they are mentioning here. Let's close this. Okay. And with the help of Django channels, we can make the asynchronous connection. Okay, it's a Django channels. It's an extension to your Django, the basic functionality or default functionality of HTTP protocol so the basic Django functionality will be there. Addition to that, you can include the asynchronous communication. Okay, so for that we are using WebSockets. Okay, and when you use channels, you will have something called channel router and channel consumers. You can just correlate with channel router is nothing but your urls.py. Okay, now the asynchronous communication, the website asynchronous communication with WebSocket happens. The Django channels, whenever the user sends a request, it comes to the, instead of urls.py, it comes to the routers.py or routing.py. We will create one file called routing.py. It will come to that file, and here the data is served from the views.py. In Django channels, the data are served by the consumers. We have something called consumers. Okay, so that's how the Django channels, with the help of WebSockets, the communication is happening. Okay, so a router is nothing but similar to the HTTP, the urls.py, which is the routing mechanism in a typical Django HTTP architecture. In the WebSocket protocol architecture, router is going to act as a urls.py, and views is consumers are similar to views in a HTTP architecture. Okay, so any question on this? There are a lot of jargons has been thrown. Just bear with me, and just at least I'll try to give whatever the information I have. Any question?
No, Pari, but
Okay.
maybe need to understand more on the architectural wise of these channels, and
Sure,
so that
sure.
maybe we'll have
So even actually I implemented for this dashboard only. Earlier I have Django knowledge is there, but channels I implemented in here. So whatever information I have, I'm just giving it. Okay. So yeah, you can go through the channel architecture when you have time, and probably we can have conversation on it if you have any questions. Right. Okay, fine. So now we'll come back to the code. Okay, one more, the last one I'll throw. So between since the WebSockets and the channels are going to work in asynchronous manner, so it needs something called channel layer. Okay, layer is nothing but a kind of messaging or queuing system. It's a queue system. Okay, though the messages are sent, because since it's asynchronous, right? So we need some kind of medium to send the data and retrieve it. Okay, so that's the reason we use Django channel layers, and the medium basically it can be a memory or it can be any any queuing system. So here we use something called Redis to store the data in memory and then retrieve it. Okay, that's a last point I want to mention. So just go through what is channels. In the channels, we have two concepts. One is routing or router and consumers. Router is basically to based on the URL path, you will route to the particular consumer. Consumer sends the data to the router, and yeah, that's all. Now come back to the code. Okay, let's just in my local I cannot run, I guess. Okay, I will try to run, but we'll run because it's already working in server. Will make use of that? We'll go to the code here. I just want comment this portion. Okay, so you need to install the package called channels. So if you look at the requirement.txt channels, I installed a package called channels and the channel Redis. Okay, this is for layer. For channel layers, we are using Redis as an in-memory database. So we need to install this. Okay, these are the two package you need to install apart from the Django and MySQL client. This is for interacting with MySQL. We are installing MySQL client. This is the Django package for Django framework. Okay, so this is about the packages. Now we'll come back to the settings.py. So once you install channels, so you need to include in the installed apps. So in the settings.py, so whenever you create a new application, right? So you need to mention here. Say example, this is my project. Real-time chart is my project, and I have a chart as an application. So that application has to be mentioned here. That's the one thing you have to make it in the settings.py. And apart from that, this is our application. Since we are using channel, that also need to be installed in the mentioned in this file. And for asynchronous communication, so we have to enable this ASGI, okay, ASGI, which is asynchronous gateway interface. So if you go to this file, okay, so here for so here we have to tell that so which so you have to actually mention that the like is right. Yeah. So in the ASI gateway, by default it goes and refers the urs.py in the your project. Okay. In case of asynchronous, you have to instruct which router, because here router is, I told you, router is similar to urls.py. So you have to mention the your router, and now in the router, the urls.router, it will call the routing file. So here you mentioned a ws underscore urs.patterns, which is being created in the, if you come to their project, similar like urls.py, we created something called routing.py. So whatever the URLs you created here, that you need to mention in that ASJ file. Okay. And so what will happen? The routing based on the URL path, it will call the consumer. So if you go to the consumer chart consumer, there is a file called consumer.py. In this, I created a chart consumer. Okay, so this is the typical Python method to get the data. So when you create a chart consumer, and you have to import the, or you have to implement, you need to implement, right? If you are familiar with the object oriented concepts, so you need to inherit the default so one of the asynchronous consumer, which is called asynchronous WebSocket consumer, you need to inherit from that and create your chart consumer. Okay, and in the asynchronous WebSocket consumer, you will have something called a function. You have to override. There is a function called connect. Okay, in that function you have to override and write your logic. And here I'm just making I'm calling this a simple function, which is basically so there is a model object. Okay, I'll just show you. There's two model object we have created. So based on this model object only, our MySQL tables got created. I showed in the when we started in the initial discussion, to create a MySQL tables, I just came to our Django app and I ran the migrations and migrate commands. So it based on the model you defined here, the tables got created. So now whenever I call this sales by card type, right, and get all the records, so it will go and read the MySQL table and get all the records. That when you say sales card type dot objects, right here, if you just say all, it will get all the things. Like if you call something like this, it will go and get all the records from that table. But we don't want that. We want actually always get the latest batch from the MySQL table. You would have seen the yesterday dashboard, right? We always get the latest batch. So there is what I'm doing is I'm just doing the order by on the batch number and gets the first. When you do order by in the descending order, you will get the maximum is the top. So get the first. So get the maximum batch number, and then again based on the batch number you query. Okay, so it's this is a Django based way of making a query to the MySQL and get the all the records for the maximum batch number. Okay. Okay, then I'm just building this, iterating the each row, and we are sending the labels like column names and data separately, because this is how the chart3.js will accept. So chart3.js, so since we are actually building the bar chart, right? So you need a labels and data separately. So I'm just so that this is constructed ways for that. So I'm just iterating the each row and putting the column name here and the data here. Okay. Any questions? So if you not worked on the web application, so it will be little new for you. Just bear with me, and if you have any question, please ask me. And then we return the final data as a dictionary, like which is a JSON structure. Well, we'll say the labels which will have the names of like whether it is whether it is basically the which card type the transaction made and respective values in this array. Okay, this is one list, this is one list, and we are forming the dictionary and sending it as a JSON structure. Okay, and you see that we call that, okay, in asynchronous way. And then when you want to make asynchronous, so we mentioned this function as asynchronous, and you have to specify wait actually, and then you send it. You send it to the WebSocket, okay, because we are using the WebSocket consumer, okay, and then sleep for 5 seconds. So this is where I just setting the interval. Okay, so if I just put 10 here, then every 10 seconds the dashboard will refresh, something like that. Now this is all happening on the Python code. Now when you, okay, so now you now go to the, okay, so this will happen. Now if you go to the HTML page where we render this, and before that let me show you this. I comment out something here. Okay, so in the views, okay, so now okay, so for okay, we'll come back to this later. Okay, first we'll see the dashboard part, and there is a synchronous way also I'm using it. Okay, so I'm communicating. I will come to that dashboard. I think if you are watch, actually I did not show in the dashboard. We have in the first section we are refreshing the dashboard. In the bottom I have given a functionality to change the filter condition and get the data. I will show that as well. Then I will explain about this. Okay, when it comes to, where is that? Base.html. I'll close all the files except this. Okay, so in the HTML file, so there is some JavaScript. I'm using it. So to load the static content, you have to say this format. So what will happen is whatever there is a static folder, whatever the content you place here, so just JavaScript or CSS file that will be loaded into this HTML. Okay, it will be referenced, and then you have to specify the file and load it. If it is a JavaScript, you have to use the script tag. If it's a CSS, you have to use the script tag with the link or script tag with CSS. Okay. So I'm using bootstrap.css. So I'm linked here, and also so I'm using the chart3.js, right, for the chart. Okay, to represent our data in a chart. So we have to include this library. This is very important. Okay, we use Bootstrap and we use chart3.js. This is the library we need to include. And also we have to include jQuery.js. I'm going to use Ajax calls here to not for this is not for the means the upper part. Below, based on the different core search criteria, I'm going to get the data for that jQuery is needed. So you include all these three in the header part of the your tag. Okay, and for style I'm using this styles. Okay, so just okay, let me run it here. Okay, so actually I cleared yesterday data for other demo. Just to open my SQL, when you root -p. Okay, use ecom db show tables. So no data here. Let me publish some data. So okay, this is done. Let's run this. Produce a consumer. Python Kafka producer. Okay, so sudo systems ctl start zookeeper. From the zookeeper is one making. And then I'll start Kafka as well. Now let's run the okay, so now it is publishing the data. In another window, I'll open the streaming application. I'll start the streaming. Okay, I'll just we'll wait for first page data to arrive in the MySQL. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's. We don't have data here. Just give me some more time. So now data is there. Okay, now so it will refresh every 5 seconds now. So this is displaying the real time data here. Okay, so every 5 seconds. Now apart from this, I also have, if you see in the bottom, I actually created two tables right here. One is sales by card type, sales by country. So here I have sales by country. The country based aggregate is there. So if you want to see this data, okay, this is also I written in the HTML. Okay, so sorry, in the MySQL. So for that, I just build a small filter. Okay, drop down I kept where you want to see. By default, it will just load for the card type as a pie chart. So whatever the data you see in the top, it will be there in the bottom as a pie chart. But this will not update in the real time. This is based on first time it will on the application load. First time when you launch, it will load here based on the card type filter, and after that you can just change your filter condition and get the data. So we have data coming from different countries like uh, India, USA. Uh, there's some typos there. I don't know why it coming like this. Okay, and Sri Lanka. So all this. So for this, I'm using actually the Ajax calls, right? So I'm making use of the jQuery, and I'm making the Ajax call to get the data from the DB. So for this reason, so we have if you see the urs.py, so we have a chart which will actually based on the filter condition you make. Okay, it is going to get the values from the DB. Okay, for that what I'm doing is here, just go to the base.html. Okay, so we need to actually now almost coding wise I explained in the Python coding. Now the HTML we started till here, right? So we have two dicks. Okay, so before I go to the main.js, I will explain here the HTML. So in the HTML, this is just we are putting the header, right? Come here. This is a static content. Real-time sales dashboard is a static content, and then there is a one more div where it actually fills the current timestamp, the refresh timestamp. This gets updated every 5 seconds. Okay, so I kept ID for this div tag. So I will keep updating this div tag with the current timestamp. And you will see two container, one container for showing the bar chart. Okay, and I'm using, if you see this all HTML tags, and I'm using canvas tag, which is the chart3js based tag to represent our data in a bar chart. We have to use this canvas tag. This is where we are going to render our chart. And one more container I have. This is one container. This portion of until this is one container, and whatever you see, this portion is another container where we have pie chart. Okay, so here also we use one more canvas tag, which is this is for pie chart. Okay, and we have a drop down. Okay, so inside your form control, form tag, because we are going to, whenever you want to get the data from web browser, okay, so it has to be in the form tag. Okay, so we kept it in the form tag, and there is we are going to put this. Okay, so there is select. Okay, so in the select, it will show you the multiple options. It's a kind of drop down, right? So this is just a label, and the multiple select values will be rendered dynamically. Okay, you can go and you can build other aggregates and then put it as in a drop down, and you can choose the different filter condition and render the data. So we will be filling this in like while loading the data, while loading the web page. Okay, and then whenever you choose the filter condition and submit, and based on the aggregate type you choose, you will call this respective URLs. Okay, so this is for getting the filter options in the drop down. This is for based on the filter option you choose, and it will go and get the aggregate data. Okay, so do you have any other question? Yes, I'll move forward. Please stop me if you have any questions. Okay, so and here, okay, so we need to basically just there is a template. We need to follow the template. Okay, so if you want to, so we are want to use bar chart and the pie chart, right? So so in the script tag, all are JavaScript only, right? Because J3 the chart.js is a JavaScript based. So you have to open a script tag and then build the chart object. So sales chart, there's a so you just get this. So we have ID, right? Pie chart ID from the document, the HTML document. You get that, and then first we are building the uh, the sales by chart. Okay, and this is going to be a pie chart. Okay, where in the bottom you see in the web page. Okay, so you need to fill this chart object. Okay, and then there are we need to specify what is the type and the option you have to specify. So in the options, we will be displaying our putting our content in that. Okay. And then if you come down, this script tag is to build the pie chart object. I'll minimize this. There's one more script tag. So where on document there is in the jQuery, whenever the page loads, so you can actually whenever the page load, if you want to load some content on your page, so we should use document.ready function call, and then makes Ajax call. So this is making Ajax call, and the URL we pass is chart filter option. Okay, it will call our this one, this URL. It will call this URL. Okay, we don't need to call manually all this while loading the page. Oh, sorry, while loading the page, this document.ready will take care of calling the this URL and fill the drop down. Okay, so when you call this, it will come to the urls.py, which in turns call the get filter option view in views.py, and I'm just sending the values, list of values, which I list of aggregate types which I have. So these are the two aggregate type I have. I'm sending as a JSON response, and that will go to and then inside that we will call. So this will get a data, right? So whenever you the REST JSON response, when you call this URL, it will go and call that. You can think of as a REST API. It will call that API, get the response, and that I'm going to put it on the sales by the drop down control I'm using it. Okay, and then I call the load chart load all charts. There's a function, JavaScript function I written. Okay, and you pass the sales type. Okay, and which in turns call load chart function. There's one more function called load chart. So you are passing chart object and the endpoint. Okay, then this all filling this. Now again you get the JSON response of the how you are going to get the data. Okay, so if you look at here, this endpoint will be called. This is here start sales by chart slash sales by and the sales by type. Okay, so it will call this function, and whatever we put in the channel consumer, right? So similarly we put it here, the data, just getting the latest document, latest batch number from the table and get the query the table based on the latest batch number. Okay, so here again I put the leaf loop based on the sales by type. It will be called, the respective loop will be called, and it will render the data in a JSON format. Again we send the labels and the data separately. Okay, so we have 1 minute left. We will disconnect this call and please join back again.